We have a visitor who is sad that I'm in her favorite chair. She definitely thinks I bought this reading chair for her. I'm sorry, but I have to use it. Whenever I have her on camera, she just stares at the camera so intensely. Wow. Hey everyone, it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the books that I have read recently. She wanted no part of that. I didn't have a vlog go up this week and I apologize for that. Vlogging has just been a struggle. I have tried, it's just I keep getting distracted by things, and yeah, but I'll talk about that more in the vlog that I plan on doing next week, and I should actually end up finishing and uploading. But it kind of worked out anyways because it is time for me to do another recent reads update. It's probably actually a little bit later than this should be because I have 7 books to talk about today, and I read some really good books. I only read 1 adult romance. I read a little bit of everything. There's some fantasy on here, historical fiction, that's what I've been really into, and 2 5-star reads. I feel like I don't even know the last time I read a book that I gave 5 out of 5 stars. Like, it feels like it's been forever, but I think it was one day in December actually was the last book that I gave 5 out of 5 stars. But the 2 on here that I gave 5 out of 5 were just, oh, so good. So if you were waiting to hear about a particular book, I will have timestamps listed in the description box down below so you can just skip to whatever book you wanted to hear about. But if you want all my thoughts on all of these books, they will remain spoiler free throughout the video, so don't worry if you haven't read any of these, but let's just get into it. The first book that I have to talk about is All Your Twisted Secrets by Diana Urban. This is an ARC, but it actually came out on the 17th of March, I believe, but this is a YA contemporary mystery story. So the premise of it is that all of these kids, kind of a breakfast club sort of group, they are all invited to the scholarship dinner, and when they get there they discover that it's a trap and there is a bomb and a syringe filled with poison. So if they don't choose one of them to die, then they will all die. So obviously that premise had me intrigued and interested in the story and what was going to happen, and I think that was what really drove this mystery for me, was the mystery aspect. Oh my god, that's so stupid. But I'm not a huge mystery reader, but when I find the premise intriguing enough, I will continue reading it and pushing through, even though it might not be the best in the beginning. Like, what I mean is, this one in the beginning I was kind of struggling with. It took me about 200 pages to actually get into it. For those first few pages, I just was kind of like, okay, I get it, but why? Why am I continuing? Why am I reading this? And not in a bad way, it was just kind of an average book, but I just wanted to know what was going to happen. There were so many unanswered questions, and that's why I didn't end up DNFing it, and I'm glad that I didn't because I did enjoy it overall. It was a very character-driven mystery story, and I enjoyed that all of the characters I think were really well developed. That was well done. The majority of it is actually set in the past, and you're learning how they got to where they are, how all these characters' stories are intertwined, how they know each other, and what connects them. And I liked that kind of putting together the puzzle pieces, but I do wish that it had been a little bit more in the present at times, because I think especially in the beginning it was mostly just the past and the setup for the situation that they were in now, but I wanted to know more about that situation that they were in, and I didn't feel like I got that satisfaction in the beginning. Like I said, I'm not a huge mystery or thriller reader, so generally when I read them I'm surprised by all of it. I'm just shocked. I never guess things because I'm not the kind of reader who's reading ahead in my mind. I'm not trying to figure out how these puzzle pieces come together. I don't really come up with theories or anything like that. I just read like in the present moment. That's just what I do. So for me, that's why mysteries aren't generally not surprising for me. I'm always shocked by a plot twist, and this was no exception. I don't think any of the twists coming. I didn't find it predictable. However, I did find some facets of the story were a little bit unbelievable and stretching a bit. But I feel like I can't really say more because it's a mystery story. You kind of just need to go into it, and maybe you'll be surprised by it, maybe you won't, but if anything, there were great characters in here. They really drove that mystery, and it was a lot of fun to read. Once I got past the beginning, I felt like I did get the payoff that I was looking for with this story. One thing I will say really quickly, and I can't really elaborate on it, but there were certain characterizations that I feel like were a little bit shaky, and the characters' actions didn't necessarily match how I read them. And that was something I struggled with a little bit, but I can't say that much more because I don't want to spoil you guys. So if you know what I'm talking about, hopefully you do. If you've read this book, you might know what I'm talking about. And overall, I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Also, this book completed the monthly TBR challenge for March of Reading and Art. Next, I read another book that completed a monthly TBR challenge, and that was American Royals by Katharine McGee. This completed the challenge of reading a new release. This didn't come out in 2020, but it did come out in late 2019, so I'm still counting it as a new release because it was released in the past year. This is an alternate history sort of futuristic story. I'm not exactly sure when it's supposed to be set. I think just in modern day, but it is alternate history. So the Revolutionary War ended with, instead of offering George Washington the presidency, he is offered a crown. So we are following the descendants of the royal family. They are the descendants of George Washington. That family still sits on the throne, and it's just imagining what if America had a monarchy, and especially with like Harry and Meghan and all of that, and that recent fascination with the monarchy. I think that this book is very timely. Specifically, we focus on the royal siblings. We have Princess Beatrice, Prince Jefferson, and Princess Samantha. Every time I say Samantha now, I just want to be like Samantha, like from Frozen 2. Whenever I hear that name, I'm just Samantha. Just like The Thousandth Floor, which is this author's other book, this is a twisted, wild web of just a lot of stuff happening. It's like Gossip Girl, but a royal family. So Princess Beatrice is the first in line for the throne, and she is set to marry a guy. She has to find a guy to marry. Her parents have set up this whole kind of matchmaking thing where they picked out certain suitors for her, and she has to pick one of them. But little do they know that she is falling for her bodyguard. On the other hand, we have Princess Samantha, who kind of kicks back and gets to live in the shadows a little bit. She has it a bit easier because she's not first in line for the throne, so she is just kind of taking it easy, does what she wants, but she ends up falling for the guy that Princess Beatrice finally ends up picking. So more tangled the web is. And finally, we have Prince Jefferson, who is falling for Samantha's best friend, Nina. So we have 3 perspectives in here, and I liked the perspectives that we got. I felt like Prince Jefferson kind of fell to the wayside a little bit because the main perspectives that we have are Nina, the girl that he is falling for, Samantha, and Beatrice. So it was mostly a story about the females that were involved in this, but I did appreciate the addition of Nina because she's not involved in the royal family. She's not a royal. Her moms are involved with the royal family, and she obviously does have an affiliation with them because she's Samantha's best friend and has been for years, but she's been able to stay out of the limelight because she didn't really matter in terms of that. I don't mean like she didn't matter, but she wasn't someone that the media ever took interest in. So her being with Jefferson obviously is kind of shaking that up a little bit, and she's an outsider that you're being exposed to the world of the royals through, and I liked seeing things through her eyes. Her perspective was really interesting. There was a lot of intersecting drama in this, as you could tell with the romances. Each of them are connected in a little way, and it became a little bit hard to follow because I found that I listened to the audiobook and I found that it took me a while to distinguish between each of the perspectives of the characters, and not even that, I did find that females were pretty well developed and distinguished eventually, but particularly the romance stories kind of blurred together in my mind a little bit, and I think a lot of that is because I think that the love interests kind of all seemed a little bit too similar for me. However, I do think this would make a great TV series because all that drama, it was so much, like, wow. Actually, there are 4 perspectives. I totally forgot. You also have Daphne, who is just, she's an interesting character. So she used to date Prince Jefferson, and she's not happy about losing the fame and fortune that that afforded her. I feel like I was invested in each of the characters and their storylines because as much as in the beginning it was hard to distinguish their voices, they did each have an intriguing plot line, and there was just so much drama thrown in here. There's political drama, family drama, friend drama, romance drama, all the drama you can think of. If you want like a wild ride filled with drama, just pick up this book. It's dang good. Beatrice was also a great character to read. Like, I did honestly enjoy all of the characters. I liked Beatrice because I liked seeing the pressure that was on her and how she would deal with that as the first in line for the throne and the oldest, and that translated into the sister relationship with Samantha. That relationship is so strained because there's always a little bit of resentment on Samantha's part because the attention is always on Beatrice, and no one really cares that much about Samantha because she's not going to be queen one day. Also, Beatrice has the added pressure of being the first ever female to be taking the throne, so that's like a whole other thing thrown in there. So the tension is high. There's just tension surrounding every part of this story, and I think Katharine McGee writes drama and just these crazy stories that you're trying to connect this web of drama very, very well. Samantha was another favorite character of mine. Like, I mean it when I say I feel like the one perspective I could have done without was Daphne's. It did add to it because she's kind of a villainous character, and getting her perspective was interesting, but I think that if one of them had to go, it would be her. The others were my favorite, particularly I think the two sisters that are actually in the royal family were my favorites. This was cheesy and dramatic and over the top at times, but it was really good and addicting to read, and the audiobook did a great job of adapting it as well. So sometimes you just need a crazy kind of over the top read, and this will definitely give you that. It was addicting and just, I had to know what was going to happen, and it also ended on a very interesting note, so I think I actually will be picking up the sequel when it comes out. And I gave this book a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Next is the one adult romance that I read this month, and I actually ended up listening to the audiobook for that, and that is The Key to Happily Ever After by Tiff Marcelo. This follows the De La Rosa family, who has had a wedding planning business in their family for years, and they have always taken part in it, but finally the three sisters are taking it over. They have inherited the business, and we have the oldest sister Marisol, the middle sister Janelyn, and the youngest sister Pearl, and they don't always get along as sisters do, and it's about them learning to take over that business, learning to balance the relationship of being family but also being business partners, and also having their own little romance plot lines in there. This book actually, oddly enough, is only dual perspective. You get the perspective of the oldest sister Marisol and then the youngest sister Pearl, and they are the two differing, the kind of dichotomy there, and Janelyn is just kind of in the middle, but it's also like just the middle child is completely forgotten about, and like you only hear about the two, like the youngest and the oldest, and that was a little bit weird. I understand why it happened, but I feel like it would have been interesting to see the character who's in the middle of all the conflicts between the two of them, because they butt heads constantly, so it's obviously not easy to be in the middle of the tension like that, and I would have liked to hear a little bit more about her. I loved the fact that this revolved around weddings, so you had these brides, you found out a lot about the wedding planning business and what goes into a wedding, and I thought that was a fun backdrop for a romance story. However, I don't think that the romances were very well developed. Each character had their own romance going on, and I found that both of them, once again, I would kind of get them a little bit confused at times because I don't think that they were distinguished enough. And I think that that's kind of suffering from the two perspectives, but also from the fact that the business and the family drama took the forefront of this story. I don't necessarily think that this should be shelved in romance. I guess like it's not a romance, but it's definitely more on the chick lit side of things because it's not steamy at all. It's just kind of a love story, but I felt like the love story was a B plot rather than an A plot. The A plot more so was the conflict between Marisol and Pearl, which was interesting, don't get me wrong. I liked reading about that and trying to balance that. Pearl particularly was a character that I loved, but I think that since I was expecting more of a romance, that kind of let me down a little bit. I did also enjoy Marisol's character, but I think because I related more to Pearl, I'm also the youngest and I'm also not so much a type A personality as Marisol is, I enjoyed her perspective and it stood out to me a little bit more. And that kind of is ringing true even now, as it's been a while since I've read this book and I can't really remember what Marisol's main plot line was. I suppose it was the stuff with the bride, I think, but her plot line really surrounded the business and Pearl's was more a coming of age story, and I think that was something that hooked me in. I liked the fact that there was Filipino culture also brought into the story and you got to hear a little bit more about their heritage growing up, and I think that the story was a little bit of everything, but it actually wasn't too much for once. This was a fun and cute read overall. It did have a good balance between the family stuff that was going on and being a little bit deeper and heavy, and the fun and lighthearted moments. So I did give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think it was good, and I will read more from this author. Next, I read Come Tumbling Down by Seanan McGuire. This is the 5th installment in the Wayward Children series that honestly I just kind of continue with because they're really short books, but this one I gave a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I just continue because they boost up my Goodreads goal, and that's something that I really need right now. I know it doesn't matter to anyone else, but it's kind of just a personal challenge for me to try and read 100 books, and I'm still 7 books behind, but that is besides the point. My main complaint with this series has always been, while they are short and that helps me to boost a Goodreads goal and get a quick read out of the way, I also feel like it keeps me from fully engaging in the story and the characters. I'm always left wanting more because they are just tiny books, like so teeny tiny, and I feel like once it actually gets going and I start to gain interest in the characters, the story is over. This one, I did like that you saw characters from the very beginning and got a little bit more of their story, but I just think that I'm ultimately disinterested in a lot of it, and it just kind of doesn't click with me. The worlds are cool and I like the sister and twin dynamic between Jack and Jill, but I think everything else just kind of, I don't know, falls a little bit flat. So I know like I probably should stop reading this series, but I love the concept of it so much, even though I don't really love the execution, but also I'm just gonna keep reading it because I'm this far in now and they're so short, like why not just keep on going. Next we have the first of my 2 5 out of 5 star reads, and that is Wolf by Ryan Graudin. Oh my god, this book took me by surprise. Like honestly, I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. I thought I would like it. I thought it'd be probably a 4 out of 5 star read, but was not expecting 5 out of 5 stars, but I just kept reading because I wanted to know more, and it was just, oh, this book was so good. So yeah, obviously I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, but this follows Yael. I think that's how you pronounce her name. I know that they said it, like they spell it out phonetically. Sorry, I've read it before and I was like, okay, mental note of that, that's how you pronounce it, but I've never actually said it out loud, so I wasn't sure if it was right when I was saying it out loud. But it follows Yael, who is a Jewish girl and she is a former death camp prisoner, but now it is an alternate history where the Axis powers won World War II. So she is living in Germany and it is ruled by Hitler, and she is going on this race. It's a motorcycle race that is held annually, and whoever the winner is, they get to meet Hitler. So she's planning on doing this race, and because she was a prisoner, she was actually experimented upon and it left her with the ability to skin shift. So she's planning to skin shift into the face of Adele Wolf, who is a girl who has won this motorcycle race before and one of the only people who has actually been able to get close enough to Hitler to possibly harm him. So Yael is going to skin shift into her so then she can kill Hitler. When I heard that synopsis, I was like, okay, I'm very intrigued because it's risky and there's a lot going on, but there also is a lot going on. I didn't even know that there was skin shifting in it until I actually like looked at the book, and then I was like, oh, okay. And that kind of, I was like, weird, don't understand, but it clicked right away, and it actually was a really interesting aspect of the story. The stakes in this book are so high. Like, I feel like I was reading it and I was like, what is gonna happen? Like, is she gonna be fine? Because there's so many chances for it to go completely wrong. And it was just the risk, and that intrigue kept me reading, kind of similarly to a thriller or a mystery like All Your Twisted Secrets. I didn't know what was going to happen in the end. I had no clue, and I was like, there's no way she can get out of this unscathed, so I just had to keep on going. But the journey of keeping on going was excellent. So we get then and now portions. Most of it is told in the present, but you also get to see her experiences in the death camp, and she has wolves tattooed on her arm over her numbers that she had, and each wolf represents a person that was formative in her life, and all of them kind of were like, you're going to be special, you're going to do something special eventually. And I liked hearing the story of each of the wolves, and that was like a then portion. You would get to piece that together, and it wasn't something that you had to work for throughout the book. I feel like a lot of times things like that, it's throughout the entire book, you're kind of waiting for that final story of that final wolf, but you did get them pretty early on. So I liked the fact that you got to know a lot about where she came from early into the story, so you could understand her character very well, because she was a fascinating character. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time reading this book because it was so risky. It's innovative and interesting and unique, unlike anything I've ever read before, and I appreciated the risks that it took, and the twists and turns of the story I didn't see coming. The ending I didn't see coming. I didn't see any of it coming. I was like, okay, like what now? And I was like, blah, blah. Like it was just so much, but so good. The aspect of the Axis powers winning the war was also super well thought out. So obviously there's going to be a lot of fallout from that. There are going to be a lot of changes that happen in the world because of that. And not only in Europe, but all around. And she did a really good job, the author that is, did a really good job of addressing those things and bringing the Pacific theater into it, and seeing how the whole world would change with that one thing. And that's actually something she addresses in the author's note. A lot of people are like, why would you even imagine something so macabre? Like, there's no point. But it's actually interesting because there is a point, and she talks about that. If you're gonna read this, definitely read the author's note as well. But it's showing you what could have gone wrong and how you have to learn from those mistakes. That's why we learn history in the first place. So it's just another added element to that. Now, Yael and the two kind of main male characters were definitely the most intriguing to me. There were some other side characters that I would have liked to see developed a little bit more if I'm going to critique, just because I was interested in them, and that's just me being greedy for more story there. But I think that all the characters were super well developed, and I understood where all of them were coming from and how they interacted and connected. This was once again kind of like a puzzle, but it was like such a good puzzle, and I don't know where the sequel is gonna go. I have it. I bought it before I even read this book, and I'm so glad that I did, because I'm gonna have to read it soon. Like, I need to know. Oh my goodness. And I'm excited to be back in this landscape. It's really gritty. Like, everything you would imagine it to be and more is pretty much what it is. So yeah, this book was great. Definitely just go and check it out. Next, I read The Night Country by Melissa Albert. This is the sequel to The Hazelwood, which I really loved when I read it when it first came out. And this book actually reminded me of why I loved it so much. The Hazelwood follows Alice, whose grandmother wrote this book of fairy tales. They're very dark fairy tales, and they have a weird little fan following of just very devoted fans. But her grandmother ends up dying, and there's this whole mystery that takes place in the first book. And this followed another mystery so similar, but I feel like it was almost better than the first book. It just was very well rounded, and you got more in this. And what I mean by that is you got more characters and more of the things that I loved in the first book. It was just as atmospheric and dark and creepy, but you got a little bit more of the original fairy tale book. You got a little bit more of certain characters that kind of fell to the wayside in the first book. And even Alice herself, you got to know her better. This more so had two storylines that were intersecting. The first book was just kind of one, but this had two pretty equal storylines that ended up intersecting in various ways. And I thought that that made the whole thing a little bit more structured than the first book was. Not that I'm like comparing them. I mean, I am absolutely comparing them. That's definitely what's happening right now, but I'm not comparing them in a way where I'm like, oh, the first book is crap. They're both really good books, but I think this did a good job of improving upon the issues that I personally had with the first book, even though I enjoyed it a lot. So since this is kind of a mysterious story and also a sequel, I can't say a lot about it, but I think that if you enjoyed the Hazelwood, you would appreciate this addition to that storyline. So I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. And finally is another 5 out of 5 star book, but I think that this one, like, I liked even better than Wolf by Wolf. Oh my god, this book took me by such surprise. It was just so good. But that book is Lovely War by Julie Berry. From the second I started this book, actually I started listening to the audiobook, I fell in love with this story and the characters, and I had to know what was going to happen to them because I came to care for them so deeply. So this is a love story that is set during World War I, but it also has a frame tale that is set during World War II that features Greek gods. So Aphrodite is telling this story to various gods, and there are various gods helping her out along the way to tell this story, but it's a whole trial happening because she cheated on her husband Hephaestus. I always want to say asbestos, like struggles, but she cheated on him and she's like, yeah, I did, like, I'm the goddess of love, whatever. And he's like, you don't have a defense? And she's like, let me tell you a love story. So she's kind of telling the love story of the gods through the love story of just these people that she was observing in World War I. Now there are 2 love stories, but they intersect entirely from the beginning. They're very much interwoven, which was so well done. But we follow Hazel and James, who meet the day before he is going to the front, and he's a new soldier. He's never been there before. He's obviously really worried about it. And Hazel's a pianist, and they meet, and it's just kind of this instant love connection, and they want to spend more time together, and it's just, oh, it's so beautiful. But the other love story that we have is Aubrey, who is part of an African-American regiment that is being sent from Harlem, so it's being sent from the US, and his love story is with Colette, who is a Belgian girl who is friends with Hazel, and both of them are working at the Red Cross together. So we have like Ares and Aphrodite telling this love story. You have Love and War telling a love story set during World War I. Oh, what more could you want? The gods were very well done. They felt like gods to me. They felt like those arrogant gods that you see in movies and stuff. They were very full of themselves, and you got that through their storytelling, but also there would be some interjections, a banter between them that just added so much to the story. Aphrodite, I think, was the perfect person to tell this. Apollo comes in to tell some of the story. Hades comes in to tell some of the story. And I appreciated each edition of a new god that just brought, like, oh, it's so smart. I don't know how she thought of it, but it's so smart. I also adored the fact that this was set during World War I. I've never read, I don't think at least, a YA historical fiction that's set during World War I. I have read an adult one, but not YA, and this was very well researched. Like, she definitely knows her stuff with World War I because it felt so real and it covered all facets of the war. You got the home front, you got the actual front, everything was in there, and it just transported you to that time period. And that was further brought through in the characters. The characters just felt like they belonged there, and they definitely screamed like 1918, we've lived through the war, we're young and living through the war, like all that stuff. That was a weird way to say that, but like whatever. This is a really character-driven romance story, but each character was very, very thoroughly and well developed, and I loved every single one of them, all 4 of them, and even the side characters I cared for, and just like, oh my god, like, I know a lot of people cried reading this book. I didn't cry because I'm a heartless human being. No, I don't generally cry reading books, but this one did bring me pretty close. It got very deep at times, which is to be expected, but it was also just so incredibly beautiful. The audiobook was great. Someone recommended it to me, and thank you to whoever did, because they were like, oh, it has jazz music in it. And that was why I fell in love with it right away, because jazz music started playing and it just like, it brought me there. I was like, oh, I understand. I get it. I'm there. And I think partially because of that, this book kind of reminded me of The Diviners in a couple of ways, but I love both of these books, so that's awesome. Getting back to the characters a little bit though, Colette was a very damaged character. She's been through a lot. She has experienced so many hardships, and she gets together with Aubrey. And Aubrey, I enjoyed the fact that racism in that time period was discussed then and through his character. It exposed me to a lot of things, and I think it was well discussed. Their relationship was just such a pleasure to read. It was kind of frustrating at times, but it was also just, it was so good. But I think that my sweetest cinnamon rolls are James and Hazel. Something about them, like, I think it's Hazel just seemed like such an innocent, just like do happy-go-lucky girl, and even James seemed the same. And then he goes off and you're like, I know what you're going to and I don't want you to go there, and like you don't want Hazel to follow him there, and like it's just so many things you don't want to happen but you know they have to happen, and it's just, oh my goodness. This book nearly killed me, okay? It was just so good. Like I mentioned though, the intersection of these stories, it was just well done. Like, there's not a part of this book that I don't think was well researched, well thought out, and gone over and over again to make sure it was perfected, because it just, like, I don't see a way that you could improve it. You have love and war arguing, and like that's so fitting for the time period, and also such a clever touch, and just obviously I'm struggling to talk about this book because I loved it so much. Like, that has not happened in a long time where I'm like, I don't even know what to say about this book because just dang. Apart from the pure and beautiful love story, there's also a friendship. The friendship between Colette and Hazel was one of my favorite things to read. It was like, even apart from just the romance, that friendship was beautiful to see it blossom, to see them looking out for each other and just being friends in this terrible time. It was just, oh my god, I need to just stop talking about this because I'm not making any sense. I'm just like saying things because I loved it so much that I can't even wrap my head around it. It's been a very long time since I finished a book and I immediately wanted to pick it up again, but that was exactly the case with this. I finished the audiobook and I immediately wanted to just like start physically reading it again. And this is a big book, but I think it's entirely worth it. I wasn't bored at all. It does have insta love, but I think it was an instance where that totally made sense and I was completely on board with it, like 120%. I was definitely on board with it, and it didn't feel long, and it just felt beautiful, and I just flew through it, and it was just, it was so good. So yeah, basically read this book if you're into romance and historical fiction. I don't think you'll be disappointed, but I also don't want to like hype it up too much, but I think it's like very underrated, so hyping it up a lot here. So this is why I don't wait until I've read 7 books to do a recent reads video, because I have like 45 minutes of footage at least. I don't even know how much because I had to like separate it and turn off the camera in between, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I read some really great books and I'm really happy with what I read, and I think reading those last 2 5 out of 5 star books has really pumped me up to get back into reading again, which is a very good thing. So please do let me know if you have read any of these books as well, what your thoughts were. I would love to hear them, or if there's one on here that you're super excited to read. Hopefully it's Lovely War or Wolf by Wolf, but really any of them, just let me know. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!